Welcome to the At the Coalface podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. This podcast is all about what it's really like in the trenches of digital and e-commerce. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the At the Coalface podcast with me, Jason Greenwood, your host. It's my pleasure to welcome Eric Vevang from ClikDone to the pod. Welcome, Eric.
Hey, how are you doing, Jason?
Very good. And you're dialing in from Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, Texas. Yeah, me and my family, we live pretty much in the city on the northern part.
Beautiful. And I guess you guys get pretty much stunning weather year round.
Not true at all. I think
Really?
Some people actually, people think that. I thought that. I always thought of Dallas, Texas as a hot place. But what actually sucks about Dallas is that you don't have much of a spring or much of a fall. You have really hot summers, and we have some brutal cold winters sometimes. So since I've been here, it's snowed every winter. And when you think Dallas, Texas, you don't think snow, but trust me, it's been pretty rough.
That's amazing. I know that obviously with the great last winter of course, there was those 2 or 3 weeks there where power was out across massive parts of Texas. And I know a lot of Texans were freaking out because it was cold in areas of Texas that it hadn't been cold for a very long time. But as you say, there was tons of areas that got snow and power grid was taking an absolute hammering. And man, it was like you guys were snowed in for a couple of weeks.
It was bad. My neighborhood was one of those parts of the city that in a rolling 24 hours, I maybe only had about an hour and a half of power. And so the inside temperature on the home was hanging in the mid 40s. And so it was extremely miserable.
I'm glad you guys made it through. And hopefully there's been a bit more resilience built into the network now in light of these. They keep calling these things like the floods and everything else and snow. They call them once in 100-year events, but they're clearly not that rare. So hopefully things are a little bit more well planned now.
Yeah, this winter we had some snow and didn't have our power go out one bit. So yeah, man, we're doing well.
Very good to hear. Now, you are the founder and CEO of ClikDone, and you've been running that for just coming up on a year now. You're also founder and CEO of localsodfarm.com, and you were the founder and CEO of Atlanta Sod Company and ran that till June 2019. So you are a serial entrepreneur by the looks of your bio on LinkedIn. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and the reason why our friend made the introduction is because ClikDone, as I understand it, is effectively an e-commerce platform that you've built from the ground up for the services industry.
You nailed it. Absolutely. I've noticed for the last 5 years now, a severe deficiency in the service space. And I always look at services as like human beings doing work for human beings. And of course, a lot of times there's products involved, but a lot of times it's sweat, it's labor. You're doing something, you're functioning for another person and they're paying you. And e-commerce has just been really underused in that arena. And so I just felt like it's my mission to fix that, kind of provide the magic bullet in this space. And I holed myself up in an office for about a year and took all the stuff that I learned from the past and the vision I have for the future. And I've been building a SaaS product that's going to fulfill the needs of the service.
And are you primarily targeting this platform at the likes of tradespeople, for example, hairdressers, anybody who does a service and gets paid for their time on an hourly rate type of basis? Is that where this is targeted at? So the likes of your builders or people that work in the sod industry, like you come from, where a service person might come out and sure, they're selling sod, but they're also selling their time to lay the sod and put it down. People like carpenters and plumbers and electricians and all sorts of other tradespeople that typically get paid by the hour for their services, and they have to manage bookings, they have to manage deposits, they have to manage time payments and all sorts of other things. What is the primary target market that if we were to look at your ICP, your ideal customer profile of this first cohort of customers for your platform, what are you targeting?
Absolutely. So we've broken it down into 3 main customer types. Like you mentioned, the home service pros. These are your garage door techs, landscapers, plumbers, HVAC, electrical, handymen, windows, all that kind of stuff, house cleaning. But there's also a huge class of people that are doing personal services. And I really am excited about personal services going into different countries. When I say personal services, I am talking about the hairstylist, the massage therapist, the babysitters, people that go out and detail and wash cars, dog walkers, mechanics, virtual assistants. And of course, as you go travel around the world and go into some of the third and second world countries, these are very undeveloped countries, but most of these people have cell phones. And a lot of the people, that are starting at the bottom and making their way through and starting businesses, they're actually doing little things like this, tour guides or driving people around. And so that's personal service. But then what I'm doing on a larger scale, and because I already have beta software that I'm using in an existing prototype business, we see this enterprise / entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur / consultant / create target market too that's needed. I started talking to a lot of like web designers and freelancers and marketing agencies that I was trying to get them to solve my problem early on. And what the feedback I kept getting from all of them was, hey, I don't know how to do that because I don't code. You're going to need someone who's a big time expert. But they kept telling me like, your question and your need has been coming up a lot lately. And I have so many people who need, if you ever find the solution, Eric, come back and tell us about it. And so one of the features, or I should say one of the subscription models we're going to be offering is going to be for consultants, creatives, freelancers, and stuff like that. So they can manage multiple businesses and help people come into the ClikDone universe and be served by like a marketing agency.
Makes sense. And so for you guys, effectively, you want to be in that space. Let's just call it digital services as an umbrella term. So you guys would see yourself as a better opportunity, or at least a higher margin opportunity or margin retention opportunity versus, say, a marketplace like a Fiverr or some of the other marketplaces for digital services. And this is an opportunity for those people that work in the digital services space to effectively market and sell their skills on an hourly rate basis or a project basis directly to their consumers. So those freelancers selling direct to their, in a B2B way, to their business customers directly through your platform.
Absolutely. And so I love that you mentioned like Fiverr and all these things, because you're right. Like so the whole thing about what a lot of entrepreneurs need, they need a website and they need a way to communicate what they do. And they need some sort of payment system, that customer to pay for it. And so our product solves all of that. And typically someone who's starting their first business or launching their first website, they're going to Google or call a local website designer or a marketing agency. They're probably going to only want to spend maybe $100 to $5,000, just somewhere in that range. And they just need to get off the ground. Like, they're already doing good work. They have a close network of people that know what they're doing, but they're trying to scale up. And so essentially what ClikDone is for a consultant or a creative or a talent that's already out there, they can have an account. And if they have the highest level, they can build up to 20 businesses inside of their subscription. And so they can create different deliverables. They can charge that business like a one-time fee to launch their e-commerce website. They can also then charge them monthly to maintain it and operate it and deliver them reports on it. But they could also hand it off. And that, of course, is simple just by transferring ownership of the business that was built. Because again, ClikDone is hybrid software. That's what I like to call it. Essentially, it's a high functioning, simple, easy to use CRM, which fulfills the back end of what the website builder does, which is puts that person's skills and ability on a website. It converts easily, displays easily, so their customers can buy what they're doing and order it and schedule it and all that good stuff. So yeah, we created this other model. And again, that's what I'm using in the beta. We've got 20 locations, so 20 different cities here in the United States. I have one access admin portal where I can look at every single one of those cities. I can look at the sales. I can look at the customers. I can change prices on a dime, and I can alter anything about each individual business, but it's all managed under login.
Beautiful thing. Now, you guys are technically still in beta. Do you have a plan for when you officially plan to launch, go to market, and make this, come out of beta and make it open to kind of everyone? And do you have your subscription model kind of nutted out as to what features and functions you're going to get? And are you going to have multiple tiers of subscription, or is it one fee and it's everything in the kitchen sink all included for the one monthly fee?
Yeah, so we are getting close. So I have the UX and UI probably 95% done. So I can take people through a demo of exactly how it works on the back end. We also have framework and demo company, like what the live websites look once they're published. But yeah, we do have 4 different subscription models already laid out. And again, my target market, we are going to go into the home service space probably first because that's my greatest network and that's what I know the most. So for those people, we're not going after the $100 million a year plumber HVAC guy that's already established. And there's usually about 3 to 4 major installers doing 100 million plus in each major city in the United States. We're not going for those guys. Our target, not at first anyways, our target market is truly like their technicians, the guys that have been there for maybe 3, 4, 5, 10 years that are dreaming about starting their own business. They can easily create a beginner account at ClikDone, keep their current job where they're at, and start running this newly created side to give them an easy transition. So the beginner business plan is going to be around $50 a month. That's with a yearly discount. You get to support one business. Of course, we do have a partnership agreement with UCO. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're listed publicly on NASDAQ. They are enabling us to be a complete white label PayFac. So all the payments will be handled within ClikDone. So that'll be at like a 3.29. You'll be able to launch one business, run it, and launch the e-commerce store. Then we have a growing business plan. You still only one business. You get a lower rate. You get into the 2.99 on your credit card transactions, but you can have up to 5 staff accounts. So this is for anybody who's grown a little bit. Maybe they're doing over 100,000 a year. They're going to have maybe a secretary, or maybe they have installers or foremen. And then of course you can go through each one of those users and assign different profiles to them, what they can access, what they cannot access. The third tier is expert entrepreneur. What I love about this is this gives someone now the ability to run up to 5 businesses. So maybe it's an entrepreneur who has a painting company, wants to start a car wash company with his dad, and he wants to start a window cleaning business, someone who just likes to keep rolling. This is $4.99 a month with a year if paid in full for the year, or $6.99 a month, just month to month. They can manage up to 5 businesses. You get a 2.79% on your credit card transactions, and each business can have up to 5 usernames per company. So you get 25 total. And this agencies and franchise, that's of course what we use, because I have the 20 businesses. You can do up to 20 businesses. You get a 2.59% on the credit card rates, and you can have up to 10 users per business, which of course equates to 200 total staff accounts. Not only is this going to be for the creatives, like we talked about, freelancers, marketing folks, but it can also be for like franchise owners. So someone has a business, but there's 10 locations or 15 locations. They can separate all those into that one username and manage it all from one login and see it from a very high level.
Yeah, sounds like a pretty much pan business product with effectively multiple tiers, multiple modules. And as you say, you've got almost like a mini CRM function within the platform to manage the customer accounts and see analytics across the customers. Now, obviously we can't see that yet because you're still in the pre-launch phase, but obviously I'm guessing that once you're fully launched and you're out of beta, then there'll be like a 1-week trial or something like that, where a business can sign up for a free trial. They can see, hey, how does this work? Is it actually going to be suitable for my business? And away we go. But when you first started and when you were looking at this, what were some specific gaps that you saw in platforms like Shopify and BigCommerce and some of the other existing SaaS platforms out there that are admittedly, especially at the lower end of tiers that they have, and they all do have their tiers that go all the way up to, for example, Shopify Plus at $2,000 plus a month, so all the way from $59 a month and everything in between. But what were some of the gaps that you saw in these other e-commerce platforms that are well established, have millions of merchants working with them? What were some of the gaps that you went, hey, we can do this better. We can orientate our platform towards the services business. And have you been coding this yourself? Are you a coder, or did you basically just have the vision for this and then you've been working with developers to get this off the ground?
Yeah, so definitely the latter. That's probably out of all the projects I've done. And like you said earlier, I am a serial entrepreneur. I've been starting businesses since I was a kid. But yeah, I don't know how to code. And this is probably one of the first businesses I've ever taken on and had vision for, where I couldn't get the thing to market entirely by myself. And so this has been a big step out of my own comfort zone, because yeah, I am having to find programmers, which of course, as right now, is extremely difficult. I've had to network substantially here around Dallas at some of the places I go to, like my church and community centers and stuff like that. And that's how we've gotten this far. And we've got some great programmers on board. But this kind of goes back to the business I had in Atlanta. And I was like, I found like a lot of service business owners, I went to college, but it was just for a brief time, didn't come from any money. I grew up very poor and I was paying my own way through school. To do that, I started my own little landscape company, laying sod. And what happened was I did a good job, and anybody who does a good job, I started getting pretty busy and I started taking phone calls. And finally, my teacher pulled me aside and she said, look, Eric, you're doing great in school and all, but if your phone's going to be ringing like this all the time and you don't have someone to answer it for you, you're going to have to quit school because this isn't going to work. You're not going to keep interrupting my class. So I made a choice that day. I think I was like 22, 23. And I started my own business and I grew very quickly. I think my first year I did 150,000. Second year I did 300,000. I hit $1 million by my third or fourth year, but I got stuck at $1 million for the next, I don't know, 3 years. And then I finally got to 3 million for the last 3 years and I couldn't get beyond that. And over that 10-year period of running my business, I probably gained 65 pounds. I almost destroyed my marriage because I had turned into an animal. I was working all the time. I wasn't really communicating well with my wife. And I almost the money was great, but I almost destroyed myself in the process. So I ended up selling the business and I made a lot of money. And I sat back. This is about 2.5, 3 years ago. And I sat back and I'm like, what do I do now? And I kind of started thinking about different career changes and this and that. All roads led me back to what I really knew. But there was this one thing that always stuck out to me back when I ran the sod company in Atlanta. So in Atlanta, the main 90% of all our revenue was providing a material, which was sod. So grass, if anybody's not familiar with what sod is, it's sod grass. It comes in a pallet. We would prepare the yard, which took machinery. It took a significant amount of labor. And then we would use that manpower to lay the grass. And I was able to get most jobs that other companies would do in 2 or 3 days. I could get done in a day and make a wide margin. But over the years, I formed great relationships with the sod farms. So I was getting the materials for prices that were way lower than what maybe anybody else could get the sod for from the material people. So I created on Wix, probably about 6, 7 years ago, part of the website became e-commerce where I would sell the pallets of grass to people that just wanted to buy the grass and didn't want our install. And I marked it up like 20 to 30%. So that's when I first started understanding the power of e-commerce. But once again, it was product based. And if you look at how all of e-commerce started, it really all centers around products. So thankfully, I had a portion of my business that was products. But I started asking myself once I sold the business, I said, I'll go back into this here in Dallas. I'll go back into laying sod and selling sod. But man, I do not want to run it the way I used to, which in the service industry or most places, you have to call a human being, talk to a human being. Human being has to go out and meet you, go over the project, deliver you an estimate, which 10 years ago, it used to be a handwritten estimate. Now it's very digital. And that's as far as technology's gotten us. You can create a nice digital estimate. You can sign it online. You can pay for it online. And all that's wonderful. And even all that will go right into a CRM. So all that's easy. It's around now. But actually going out and meeting with customers and doing the sales and all the focus that's created on that, it's a lot. And so I told myself, I'm like, if I'm going to start this thing again, like there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way to communicate what I'm doing online so people can just buy it straight away without having to engage me in person. And even if they need to talk to me, by God, at least we can do it on the phone and just pull up your house on Google Maps or check it out satellite. And interestingly, all this started happening right when COVID happened. And so now my idea became the world's idea. Let's do business away from each other, right? Let's figure out how to get my home fixed up without you shaking my hand. That was perfect for me. So I started doing everything over the phone. I would pull Google Maps up. I'd measure their yard with a satellite tool. I'd say, oh yeah, I can tell exactly what you have. Here's why it's not working. Here's the price. Okay, boom. And I was selling jobs $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 on the phone in 5 minutes without talking to them. But even that got a little exhausting. And I was like, man, because I'm always trying to make things better. So I'm like, I'm going to communicate this. Like I can show my prices online using Wix or Shopify per pallet of what the material is going to cost. But when it comes to, and this is really the secret sauce, the answer to your question, but the key to properly doing e-commerce in the service world is being able to vary your pricing over quantity. And so you think that would be an easy solution. It sounded easy to me. But if you dive deep into Wix and try to do what I've done now on my beta, there's not a solution. You dive deep into Shopify, there's not a solution. So anytime you start trying to vary the price is over quantity, the way it's displayed to the customer on the website is very clunky. It doesn't really translate and make sense to the person at all. And yeah, I started getting, or I went to the developer part of Wix and talked to those folks, and they want to charge me 10 or 15 grand. And I think I finally found a guy, it was like 15 grand, and he got me like version 1 using Wix, but it sucked. It didn't look good. And this guy did his best kind of to the extent that Corbin would allow. So then I finally went over to Shopify. I made my own version of what I imagined, and it still wasn't what I imagined. Fought for weeks to try to get this thing figured out. Talked to a Shopify expert to custom build me some stuff. He wanted like 35 or 40 grand. And even his solution was like a complete backwards way of doing it. And I knew the end product, whatever he was going to deliver me, wasn't even going to be what I was asking for. That's really the big problem I had. And from there, it literally was a chance miracle meeting at my church. Craziest thing in the world. There was this guy behind me. We started talking. I found out he was a computer programmer, young guy. We met up the next day. I told him my issues. He said, "Oh man, I can do that for you." And literally 2 weeks later, he has this beta nailed down. It's not the most beautiful thing, but it was exactly what I was envisioning. And so we got that product in our hands June of last year. I put one guy in charge of the companies. We ended up doing $500,000 with one person running that company last year. This year, we've already hit 250 and we're on pace. We're on pace to do 1.5 to 2 million. One guy running it, and we've been able to scale that using the beta software into 20 locations.
What an amazing story. So many successful businesses start. It's about identifying a gap in the based on your own personal experience and saying, we've got to build a better mousetrap, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And what is your vision? What are the things that you see standing in your way of going from, we've got this beta, we've got to a place where we're pretty happy with the software. It's as an MVP or a V1 product, we're say 90, 95% of the way there. What are some of the gaps you feel like you have to fill before you can actually go live and get this thing launched? And then secondarily, how are you guys dealing with, and I guess this is perhaps a question in terms of the product management and the product roadmap, and you may not be here yet, but one of the strengths of Shopify and BigCommerce are their app stores. And it's just like the iPhone or Android or whatever else. The strength of the ecosystem around a platform oftentimes will define the success or failure of that platform. And we see the same thing with NetSuite and other SaaS platforms with suite apps. And we see pretty much, if you look at Xero and you look at the success of Xero in the market, that's another question I have. What kind of accounting packages do you integrate with out of the box? Something like a Xero, or is that on the roadmap? So I guess, what does your ecosystem look like? Have you built it to be integratable from the ground up, i.e. does it have a full suite of APIs, because you know that this is going to have to be integrated with other business systems ultimately as your customers grow and scale and size? So what are you doing behind the scenes from a product perspective to make sure that an ecosystem can be built around your platform should it be successful?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great question. So one part is, of course, QuickBooks Online is our number one integration we're going to do first. And that is not going to be included in the MVP as soon as it launches, but it'll be the very first thing that we incorporate will be QuickBooks Online. So that'll handle the accounting, where all the orders that come in will feed directly over and input into someone's QuickBooks Online account. As far as allowing ClikDone to be customized with a bunch of different apps and stuff like Shopify does it. So that's one thing I'm probably going to catch a lot of flack on coming out of the gate. And listen, I'm open to changing, especially if the market demands it. That'll be the only thing that gets me to change course once early in obviously, as I move through a couple years in, 3 years in, and we're growing, we'll probably start changing a lot of courses and going in the direction that our customers want. But out of the gate, it really is going to be a culture thing. And a lot of what I have to offer is showing new business owners or very early business owners how to properly run their business using technology. And I have one mandate with ClikDone, and that is to make the greatest impact with the least amount of effort. When I was little, I always studied perpetual motion, and I had this dream of being the person that found the secret to perpetual motion. I think e-commerce is one of the most beautiful things we have in the business world. The three things I think about when I think e-commerce is trust, speed, and scale. And if I can get new business owners or just people that are dreaming of starting their own business and get them into my ecosystem and teach them how to run a business in the culture of ClikDone, I think that in itself will yield such great results that any other distractions in trying to make a bunch of other things work with us could take away from actually where we're trying to land this thing anyway. So I'm not in the beginning. Obviously, the way it's being built is very sound. I don't know all the technical terms, but I know that the guy that's building it right now has several multi-million-dollar businesses that he built from the ground up. And so he's very good at software design. He's too busy. I've tried to make him my co-founder. I'm still trying to talk him into it. I am still, by the way, if anybody hears this thing, I am still looking for a technical co-founder that can come on, help me, and wants to commit the next 3 to 5 years of their life to really launching this thing out, because I have a whole marketing plan ready to rock and roll, and it's going to be big. But yeah, I think the culture of just simplicity is what the service business world needs. I think that for ever since the beginning of time, when people think services and service business and starting a business, it's been all about sales. There's so many old hats still roaming around that want to talk sales and shove sales books up your throat. Hey, it's all about the follow-ups. It's all about this. It's all about that. One thing that is obvious now in our culture is that sales are actually very easy. If you do a good job, you're honest, and you can communicate, you can sell all day long. The real problem facing our world is not sales, it's fulfillment. That's the problem. And for the last couple of years, I watch the news constantly. I'm in the financial markets. I trade the markets as well. It's almost no one quite has really put their finger on what the heck is wrong with the world. And it's this gap between how far technology has gotten us and where it hasn't gotten us yet. Uber Eats, DoorDash, and a lot of these new service companies that are automating things, they figured it out. The first thing you automate in the services world is the sale. And then fulfillment will come later. We don't have robots flipping hamburgers yet, but that'll come. It's already in development. It'll happen. But right now, at least you can automate the sales. And so we need to do that for every electrician, every car wash guy, every landscaper, every roofer, every HVAC guy, so they can focus on their fulfillment, training their guys, hiring their guys, making sure their customers get a good job. And so that's what ClikDone's about. So I'm going to be very, very careful to bring in any outside stuff that starts muddling it up, because everything was built, and I can't wait for you to see it, Jason. I'll probably actually do a demo for you after we're done. If you have time, I'll actually let you see the software. It'll be fun for you to see how it works. But we use color. We use a flow model to get people from like actually delivering an estimate or giving someone a price into actually them making the sale. And then we really focus on them completing the job. A lot of small business owners fail because they'll receive money for a job. They'll get this feeling that, oh, wow, I did it, but they haven't even done the job yet. So a lot of guys will end up spending money that they haven't even really earned. And so our model is built around helping people understand that it's about fulfillment. And so we automate the sales. So I hope that answers your question. I'm not opposed. And obviously the market will dictate where we go. I'm not going to be so hard-headed to just do it my way. But I do believe the culture of ClikDone is really important for these small businesses as they're starting out. And I have a feeling 5-10 years down the road, we're going to have a massive marketplace of ClikDone businesses that are for sale. You can buy them, transfer them, sell them all on a ClikDone marketplace, because people are going to want ClikDone ran businesses because they're going to be stewarded.
Makes sense. So effectively what we're saying is closed ecosystem to start, but obviously as the platform grows and matures, then hopefully as long as it's been architected smartly, then there'll be a suite of APIs where other platforms can be integrated via other middleware tools like Zapier, for example, so that other systems can be integrated with your platform with relative ease, get data out, get data in, and
100%.
It makes sense. And look, building an app ecosystem or an app framework and an app store is an undertaking all of its own. So I can completely understand not wanting to bite that piece of meat off to start with. But certainly I think in the medium to long term, it would create an opportunity. And it seems like pretty much all the major successful, hyper successful SaaS platforms out there, they do have an app ecosystem. It takes a village. We as entrepreneurs, sure, we got a lot of great ideas, but we don't have all the best ideas. And so therefore it does take
100%. And that's the thing about ClikDone, like this isn't just going to be for services. There's going to be a lot of product businesses that come in, see what we do, and they're going to like it way better than Shopify. especially when it starts buzzing. So of course, we're going to have to get plugins and apps built around shipping and freight and all the wonderful things that Shopify does. And also, of course, we plan to go international. And so that's going to be a big deal to us. And having different QuickBooks Online may be huge in America, but that doesn't mean it's huge in another country. And so we know we're going to have to do that. I would also, this reminds me too, just to mention, I think the reason that I landed here, like I didn't just wake up and have this desire to own a SaaS company. Like this wasn't like a technical decision. This was just something where I had a need and we built something that solved it. And then once I saw it, I was like, oh my God, the world needs this. So that's really what led us to here. I asked myself, like, why hasn't like people ask me like, well, doesn't Shopify do this? Doesn't Wix do this? Doesn't Squarespace do that? I'm like, you would think so. And maybe they do. I had a friend tell me that there's a Shopify version in India that does something similar, but it's not in America. And I don't know exactly what he's talking about. But the whole point is, I think when things are started from a certain perspective, especially in the programming world, they just keep getting more and more iterated, and they keep getting more and more weird, and they keep getting more and more built out. And it's almost like a lot of these companies have gone so far down the rabbit hole that taking a step back and working backwards would not benefit them and their shareholders. So I think it's like that book that Peter Thiel wrote, 0 to 1. I think a lot of monopoly run their course after maybe 15, 20, 25 years. And sometimes the last to the market is actually the one that takes over the monopoly position, because this one company said, hey, this is it. And this is the way we do it. And everyone agreed because it's working and it does work. But then towards the end of that monopoly phase, someone's, hey, wait a second. I don't know why y'all are missing out on this, but this is the new way. But that company, truly for them to transition into that is almost impossible, because it goes against all of their belief systems and it goes against everything they've already built and done. So I think that's one of the major opportunities for ClikDone. And I wouldn't doubt, honestly, if someone like Shopify or Wix comes along our product 2, 3, 4 years into it and wants to buy it and plug it in to their existing ecosystem as this separate thing for the services industry. But I think for them, it is going to be too late to put something in there, because it's just not going to look right. They built all this stuff with product-based businesses in mind. They don't have the heart and mindset for service-based businesses. And that's really how we're getting into this thing.
Yeah, we see that all the time. The monopolistic players in an industry, they got there, but what got them from 0 to 1 is not going to get them from 1 to 100. And I think that Microsoft is probably a prime example of that. It took many years and a new CEO with a completely new vision of the world for them to even start thinking about creating SaaS versions of their software and creating cloud infrastructure and everything else. But look how successful they are now. But it took 10 years of pain and 10 years of slowing growth and 10 years of the market telling them you're not creating the things that we need or we want. And now we're back at a place where Microsoft is one of the biggest cloud players in the world with Azure. So businesses can pivot, but you're right. It's like turning the Titanic when you're at scale in your company, right?
Exactly. So that's the situation. At the end of the day, and this is almost like my fallback plan, right? It's like at the end of the day, I have a working business. The beta version is, I can't depend on that forever. I need something better, something more stable, something more beautiful. And so at the end of the day, if ClikDone is used in-house and for all my friends and family members, and if it's just an organic thing and we make 100 millionaires out of it, that's awesome. But I do have a feeling. I recently went to Africa to climb Kilimanjaro, and it was really interesting to me. I wouldn't call it like Tanzania, like a third world country or anything like that, but it was very underdeveloped. And it was interesting. Everybody had a cell phone. Every single person had a cell phone, but most of them were the old school Nokias that we haven't seen around here in America for 8, 9, 10 years. And so I got to thinking, I was like, hey, why don't y'all have the $1,000 smartphone, the Apple phone? And they're like, we just can't afford that. But yeah, they are here and they are available. And so I started realizing again that this business, this software outside of America and these developing countries could very well be a massive play, right? Because no matter what you're doing, whether you're washing dogs, maybe you're 16 and you're washing all the dogs in the neighborhood, or maybe you're just a meat vendor and you're selling meat to all the tour guides that are climbing the mountain. Like, you can put all this stuff on a domain name built by ClikDone. You have a menu. You literally just use your phone as the payments device, or as the ordering device, the point of sale. And then they place an order right then. You plug in the information, or you can accept their cash, whatever, and it's done. They get emailed a receipt. You get everything. And so that's to me a major opportunity.
Exciting stuff. Very exciting stuff. Do you have a date in mind at this stage when you think you'll come out of beta and you at least V1 will be available to the general public?
Yeah, so my developer has told me end of May, so that's pretty exciting. That's in 2 months. The very first thing we're going to do, obviously, and we may start plugging in before the end of May, but the very first thing we're going to do is plug in my existing company, localsodfarm.com. That obviously will be the customer, so to speak. I'll be a customer of my own business. So that'll be like the agencies and franchise model. And then once we test proof all that, which the good news about that is that that's a live working every day right now. I saw today we did about $35,000 in transactions just today at 4 different locations. So everything is going to get tested, plugged in, and then hopefully, by June. So hopefully by June, we're actually going to start launching our first ad campaigns.
Awesome stuff. Really exciting. And we'll be watching very closely once ClikDone, and just for the audience's benefit, ClikDone is not spelled C-L-I-C-K. It's C-L-I-K-D-O-N-E. So ClikDone.com is where your website is currently. And if people want to get a hold of you, where is the best place for someone to get a hold of you? Is it best for I see if you go to ClikDone.com now, you can click get updates and you can effectively sign up, find out, presumably go on a mailing list for when you're going to launch, etc. So is that the best thing for people to do today to find out more about ClikDone, is just sign up for the update?
Yeah. So if you're someone you think that you might want to use ClikDone in your own business, or you're wanting to start a business using ClikDone, definitely go to the website. And like Jason mentioned, ClikDone is without a C. So ClikDone.com. Just, fill out your email address on the get updates. And we are going to be updating people there about when the version 1 comes out, links to how you can purchase it. And we're also too, for people that come in early, that already have existing businesses, we are going to be doing like some test clients where we might even give away just like the program free for 6 months, just to really onboard people. So that's an opportunity for anybody listening. If you want to get a hold of me personally, whether you're an investor or you just want to get to know more, I would say LinkedIn is probably the best way. And you just search for Eric Vevang and then last name Vevang, Vevang on LinkedIn. And again, I'm very active in all this stuff. And so, no one's going to bother me. Reach out.
Great stuff, Eric. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Now, new segment of the podcast is where I turn over the microphone to you. I flip the script and I let you ask one question, any question you like of me, and I do my very best to answer it. So turning the mic over to you, Eric Vevang from ClikDone. What is your question for me?
Absolutely. So if you hadn't heard of ClikDone or seen what I'm doing or had this podcast today to learn more about me, knowing that I read a little bit about you, that you see into the future, you're definitely a visionary. Where and how would you describe how e-commerce molds and adapts to the service industry? What would have been your way of describing, or maybe even your way of describing it now? Because I'm interested to see how similar it is to what I'm trying to do and what I'm envisioning, or where I'm missing something, or maybe it's totally different. I'm just really interested in how you see e-commerce serving the service industry.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It largely doesn't. The reality is, I've been involved in e-commerce for over 20 years. You hit the nail on the head. The industry has always been orientated around physical goods primarily. And I think the reason for that is not so much that the service industry was intentionally ignored. It was more that e-commerce sprang out of the mail order catalog industry. That's really what the root of e-commerce came from. And so when you were looking at the old school Sears back in the day, when you were looking at the old school Macy's back in the day, when you were looking at old school department stores, particularly when they were wanting to service rural customers that were nowhere near a major town or city where these stores were located, that's where the mail order catalog need came from. And so they were able to send their mail order catalog all over the United States, including to rural addresses. People could order through a mail order catalog, post that in with it, just slip it in an envelope, and then a month later, their goods would arrive. And so I think that's primarily why e-commerce has gone the way that it's gone, is because it's effectively just a digital version of a mail order catalog. And so I think that the services industry has been underserved for a very long time, as you have found out, trying to find platforms that can service that space. What I do, and with my clients, and the vast majority of them that operate either some sort of hybrid of products and services, or they are effectively a services business, is that we will go in and we will help them productize their services. And so that helps them to be able to scale more effectively, because it forces them into a structure that is more like a product to be sold and fulfilled. And so it changes their mindset a little bit, and it allows them to start thinking through the lens of a product versus through the lens of a service that has all those idiosyncratic complexities, as you've rightly described. And it forces them to streamline. In many cases, it forces them to streamline their product model. It forces them to streamline their processes. It forces them to streamline their organizational design. It really forces them down a path of optimization that maybe they wouldn't go down if they weren't forced to go down that path in a product-orientated platform model. And so you're right. I think that it's an underserved industry. I think you do have very much a blue ocean space for what you're trying to do. And I think it's very interesting. It's a very interesting space. And just speaking for myself, obviously I'm a consultant, and because of the way that we work, we're on a subscription. We're effectively a SaaS based, or a SaaS based consulting subscription. So it's a fixed monthly fee. And so when my clients come on board, I don't really need to execute through an e-commerce experience, because we just set them up as a rebilling service inside of Xero, and the invoice automatically goes out, and it's set up for auto pay, and they can just pay via business credit card, and it just happens every month without them having to think about it. But it's because I've productized my service that allows that to be so easy to fulfill. But for other businesses that have a mix, particularly like you were describing, so let's say your sod business, for example, you've got a mix of products and services, and that's what makes some of those service-based businesses much more complex. And there's not a perfect one-size-fits-all e-com platform out there. And I think that's why there is this blue ocean space for you and your business.
Yeah, man, that's it. You nailed it. And that's it. And I think what I'm really excited about, probably the most, and really the holy grail of what we've done, is the pricing calculator tool that we created in the back end. And it's really like what you talked about. So I use the word minutize. We actually have a trademark here because it's not a real word. So I've applied for a trademark for the word minutize. So you said productize. So I like to tell people, like, hey, we need to minutize your skills and abilities. And hey, if you wash cars, like, on your e-commerce site, you need to have a picture of a sports car, and it's, hey, sports car wash, and it's going to be a certain price for one of them. But when someone has two sports cars, well, there needs to be a price discount that needs to pop up. And then there needs to be order add-ons, right? You need to be able to add on if you're going to do a wax, if you're going to do an interior cleaning, if you're going to do and then there needs to be that final thing as you're checking out, right? Like the pop-up. You need to have one of those too. Hey, do you, for an extra $15? And so we put all that in, but the pricing tool is what is amazing. So you can actually go in on the back end, select the product that you made, and then you're going to assign, or a service, product or a service, you get to assign the cost of one, and then you get to assign like a secondary cost to it. So there, you get to play with two numbers. That second number really helps people understand my labor costs versus my material costs. And then you build your margin in that you want to profit on that second cost. What's really cool is with a lot of places where, let's say, material prices change, like this year, almost all of our sod prices went up, because all we have to do is go into those pricing calculators, go to the one quantity, change the price of one, and hit save, and instantly it goes across the whole platform. So if you think about a plumber, the guys have these price books, and one toilet costs X, 3 toilets cost this. If the client says no, here's the lowest dollar you can give them. We made sure we did all that on the back end, made it easy to do. Yeah, man, it's exactly that. It's pricing, having pricing variables over quantity. And then when you do that, it still has to speak to the buyer. It's no different than putting a candy bar at the checkout register. It's got to make sense to the buyer. There can't be all these rubs. There can't be all these bottlenecks. They're wanting to buy something. If you make it easy for them, and you look trustworthy, and it's actually going to work when you check out, they'll buy all day long. So that's what we're trying to do, man.
Yeah, I guess if I was to use the language of the e-com industry for physical goods, we're talking about tiered prices, and we're talking about cross-sells and upsells. That's effectively what we're talking about. If you were to sell one widget at one price, 5 widgets plus of the same item, this is the price per unit. 10 widgets plus, here's the price per unit. So you've brought in the concepts of tiered pricing plus cross-sells and upsell into the model, that's taking a leaf out of the product e-commerce playbook. And that makes complete sense that you would do that on a service basis as well. Look, Eric, I've learned a ton. Really appreciate your time. Wish you all the best. Would love to. Let's get you back on in 6 to 12 months. Let's see how your launch went. Let's see how the uptake is going. And look, I've learned a ton, and particularly around the services-based space. And love your enthusiasm, love your energy, and wish you every success. I think you're gonna kill it, my friend.
Thank you so much, Jason. Really appreciate you having me on here.
Thanks for listening to the At the Coalface podcast. If you want more At the Coalface, you can subscribe to our premium e-commerce and digital newsletter, At the Coalface Digest.